Howdy, and welcome back to You've Got People Problems, where we tackle the leadership challenges that no one wants to talk about, but every business faces. I'm your host, Melissa Ortiz with Activate Human Capital Group, and this is episode 4. Today, I'm joined by Amy Courter, a seasoned executive, board leader, and EOS implementer, to talk about one of the most challenging topics in leadership: accountability. Too often, accountability gets tangled up with shame, blame, and fear, which only leads to disengaged teams and broken trust. But it doesn't have to be that way. In this episode, we dive into some practical strategies for creating accountability without blame, fear, or shame, how assuming positive intent leads to stronger team dynamics, and how EOS and Predictive Index help leaders put the right people in the right seats. If you've ever struggled with holding your team accountable without damaging morale, pretty sure that's all of us, this episode is for you. Let's get to it. I just want to have a conversation with you and talk to you about this topic, which plays so much into how do we build healthy teams that get amazing results, which you are an incredible expert on. So for those of you who don't know what EOS is something we're going to talk about. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about Predictive Index and some of the tools that can help you build great teams. But Amy, why don't I let you introduce yourself as an EOS implementer, a business expert, and what the heck is the term EOS stand for?
Yeah, well, thanks so much. And wow, and that was just awesome. I don't ever try to rack and stack, where I fit. I just love helping. So it's you've humbled me greatly, and you are terrific. And I love when two people get together that just love people and try to find the best ways to show our genuine care and concern. Oh, it's awesome. So I'm humbled to be here. So EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. And every once in a while, I'll run into folks who go, "Ooh, I don't know if I'm an entrepreneur." And I say, don't worry about that. Worry about if you have genuine care and concern for your people, care about what your organization does, whether it's a for-profit or a not-for-profit. What EOS does is it gives you an operating system on which to really run your organization and take care of the people and also accomplish your mission and hold accountability, basically get vision shared, get traction across the organization, and then have a healthy team. So with that as the context, that's where EOS kind of fits in for me. I was fortunate across my career. I always say it's a career scavenger hunt. It wasn't exactly a career path. So anybody who asked, and the first time I was on a stage and someone said, "Tell me about your career path," and I'm standing in front of all these college students, and I thought, "Oh no, this isn't a good story because I'm everywhere." Now, of course, fast forward decades, and everybody takes quite a scavenger hunt through. But I've had the opportunity to start out in my dad's business. I grew up in an entrepreneurial household, loved his care and concern and passion for all the things that he did. Also thought, oh my goodness, I hope there's a better way, because 18 hours a day isn't always the best for all of us. But oh my goodness, it was great to see that. And then my path took me to sitting in a lot of seats, as you said, Mel. It's from leading an organization of 60,000 plus personnel across the United States and Puerto Rico, to leading 2 divisions of a global publicly New York Stock Exchange traded company, to sitting in about every seat at a leadership table. So I also joke, I've been a CEO, a COO, a CIO, a CFO. I led sales and marketing. I didn't get a C title. It would have been cooler. But I always joke that I wanted to be an EIEIO, and now I'm an EOS implementer. So I'm a certified EOS implementer and happy to help.
That's amazing. It's interesting. What struck a chord with me in that is the career scavenger hunt. I wish if we could get college and high school students to realize there is no ladder. The ladder doesn't exist. You're going to be on a climbing wall. You're going to be on a scavenger hunt. And I'm on a school board, and I think about these kids, and the data says that most of the kids in school right now, the jobs they will have, they don't even exist yet. So for them to be thinking about their career path, what they need to be thinking about are their talents and how they learn and how they grow. And that, to me, is just a thing that will serve them better than this discussion around career path. But that's probably another conversation for another day. My name is Melissa Ortiz, and I have been helping companies and organizations of all types optimize talent and engagement and retention for the last 18 years. And I just love the non-tactical HR people space? How do we get the right people in the right seats? How do we help them engage and thrive? Because what I've seen over all this time is that when someone is in the right role, they not only perform better, climb that career path ladder, climbing wall, scavenger hunt more effectively, but also they go home to their families and their communities. They have more energy for volunteer work, for their faith, for their families, for their physical well-being in a different way. And so this core tenet of EOS, of right people, right seats, resonates with me on this ripple effect level that I've just been honored to spend my career doing, because it's endlessly fascinating to me. So one of my core pieces is predictive index, which is a tool for getting scientifically the right people in the right seats. And then also a lot of employee engagement assessments to play that game of whack-a-mole, because we can't do all the things for all the people all the time. We actually have to prioritize those efforts, and that helps us do so. So, Amy, I'm thinking we could just dive in. I asked you this question earlier, and I want to do it on record now about, you just finished annual season, which is for EOS implementers, a huge time where we bring our clients together, figure out what's really going on, and how do we help them set the tone for the coming year. What are you hearing in the people space that really should resonate today, that we should spend some time on, because your clients are probably not the minority?
Yeah, no, great question. And yeah, and as we talked, when you asked that earlier, it just popped right into my mind that something that I've noted is that teams really think about, like I said earlier, right? We're vision, but there's an attraction and accountability around that. And sometimes we think that we have to be that Midwest nice. So sorry, I'm from Michigan, but that Midwest nice of, well, the best thing I can do to, if I genuinely have care and concern for my people, is to just be good to them, be nice to them. And sometimes nice it's so different from kind. I always say we need to be kind. Kind is that if I do have spinach in my teeth, now everybody's going to look, that you do tell me about it. You don't say, oh, I don't want to bother Amy and tell her what she really needs to know. And I always say, hey, if you care enough, you should want to help someone through a time that, something that they don't know, or sometimes we think they don't know, but or we think they do know, rather. And that's even worse. Then it's like, oh, I'm not going to tell them. They must know that they're coming across wrong. Nope. Important to tell people and share. So in that being kind, what I've recognized is, and I love the title today, Accountability with Shame, that without shame, that it really isn't about a shame and blame show. It's just something that I've found that at times I'm hearing what I know start out as reasons and maybe even become excuses of why we didn't complete something in the last year, in the last quarter. And you can just see the angst and the concern on, in someone who's sitting in a team who really, really, really wanted to do their best, because who shows up to do their worst? And so they wanted to do their best. They didn't want to let the team down. And so now their insides are coming out as they're trying to just, atone for these poor, things that happened to them. And what I say is, it's not about blame and shame. What it is about, though, is it's a team sport. And life is a team sport. Thank God it's open book, right? And it's a team sport. So why don't we get the assistance from others? So I say we need to identify the issues and solve them, not blame and shame. It is about identifying and solving. And so that should enable people to raise their hand a little earlier and more often to say, I'm not quite on track to get this done. I need some help. And I think another minor recognition in all of that, Mel, is that we often aren't the best people to notice when we need some help, right?
Because we're busy being busy, right?
Yeah.
And then we look up and the quarter's over and the thing we committed to do, it didn't get done, but a lot of other little stuff got done, and we have not a lot to show for it. And that's frustrating. It's demoralizing. So I'll ask you a question. I'm going to back up for a second. We talk about this accountability without shame and how to combat being nice and avoiding some of the hard things. Is this a newer struggle? Is this something you've seen across your career? Give me some time horizon.
Oh, no, I've actually, it's something that I've been reminded about more frequently as we go through, a time when we're really looking at how we did across a whole year. However, I can tell you all the way back to my first management role. So decades ago, let's just say that, many decades ago. I was 5. No, I wasn't, but I looked like it. And I had a team that was responsible for the computer systems for a whole corporation. So across multiple different facilities and everything. We had networks all over, and we were responsible, though, to keep them all up and running. And I had a team that was on a 24-hour cycle. I mean, this was before being able to say, oh, we can do that through the technology. We had people who had to move tapes around and blah, blah, blah. And so that team, I'm not there at 2:00 in the morning. If someone makes a mistake and they don't tell me, by the time everybody comes in at 8:00 a.m., there might be havoc. There might be systems down and really bigger issues. And so while these folks were typically didn't have, advanced degrees or anything, just very, here's the job. And they were awesome. I had a terrific team. And what I recognized right from the very start was, I'm not going to be here overseeing you, right? I'm not going to micromanage. I'm going to tell you my expectations. I'm going to manage you. I'm going to tell you my expectations and be clear about it. I'm going to lead you. Hey, here's the bigger picture. Here's where we're going. And then I'm going to let you help me know what you need. And so I still remember, I think I answered the phone before I awakened fully at 2 a.m. But when I got a call, and it was someone saying, I think I've made a mistake. And I'm really, really sorry to wake you up. And I said, I'm really, really glad you woke me up. I had to get up to answer the phone anyway, so it's okay. And I ended up getting dressed and going into the office in a world where we didn't have things at home to connect in. I had to drive, and I drove in, whatever it was, half an hour, and got there. And he's standing there showing me the printout and what happened in the computer room. And absolutely, Mel, if he had not called me, we could not have fixed it. Now, the important part was that what I said to him, he then told everyone, because what I said was, thank you, not anything else, not, screaming at you, not right, fire you, or any other words like that. And what I said was, thank you. If you had not let me know, I wouldn't have known to come in, and had we not started fixing it, because maybe by the time we're really fixing it, it's 3:00 in the morning, and honestly, we got it done just in the nick of time. And so that has been a steady throughout my career. I know that I want people to feel comfortable sharing what I say are gifts. They could be badly wrapped even. It could be somebody screaming at me that something broke and that's why this happened. And I say, it's okay. Thank you. Let's figure out how we identify the roots of this and solve it. And so absolutely has been timeless for me.
It's interesting. A couple of things you said there really resonate with me from a data perspective, because 2 of the most foundational elements of our engagement survey are about clear expectations and the resources people need. And they often come in different packages in terms of the expectations when things go wrong, which is what you're talking about. I want you to call me. I will welcome that so we can fix it quickly together, rather than this shame that often comes with it, that we try to hide it. The other thing that resonated, help me know what you need. A resource is sometimes information. It's sometimes an escalation. Sometimes it's just a new keyboard. But resources come in all these different sizes and packages. And the way we accept issues, rather than blowing up, we actually okay, I'm going to stand in line side by side with you, and we are going to work on this problem together, rather than come at each other. And I think it's kind of the tone. That's how it sounds. I think I'll ask the question. It sounds like what you're saying is part of the right way we start to break down the shame around, I didn't get that done, is we're aligning side by side to attack the problem rather than the person. Is that what you share with your clients, or do you phrase it differently?
Absolutely. In fact, I specifically at times have said, I get on the same side of the table they're on, and we solve together. So I make that really clear, whether it's a physical same side of the table or just the way in which we think about it. And I can and I'd love, if I could, Mel, to just give you one more example that really drives it home. I was responsible for 552 aircraft and thousands of pilots and tens of thousands of personnel, and we performed 90% of the search and rescue in the United States and Puerto Rico. And before I became that national commander, I was a general. I was a colonel leading Michigan. and where I had like 1,400 people and I only had 10 aircraft. When one of the things I recognized was that ability for us to share that something's wrong. Again, it was after that happened in my, IT job, my tech job. And I literally, as I was stepping into the second in command position there, I said to my commander, and I was probably one of the youngest. I was the first female, and I said, I really would love for us to think about the way in which we engage our young people as well. We had a lot of young people, cadets, as well as the adults. And I said, because they're the eyes and ears. They're watching what happens, and I've always known that if I want to know what's really happening, I just go over and ask a cadet. Now, it's hard to do when you're a general because you scare them, and yeah, it's bad. So I would always like, no, it's okay. I'm just asking. But throughout my career, I've found, and I've always been careful about that as you get higher in an organization, people tend to think they're going to tell you what you want to hear. And so I know I need to make sure they know what I need to hear and how I'm going to praise them for it. And so I recognize that there were a lot of little things that these, that even, whether cadets or adults, they were all seeing these little minor things that over time, that's what a real safety accident is a certain number of incidents that occur that grow up to be a bigger issue together, right? And so I literally created these, we had these little cards, this was a long time ago, created these little bright yellow oops cards. So it had our official, Air Force auxiliary logo on it, and it said oops, and it had a place for somebody to write, I saw this and thought that I should help you or share this with you. And there was a place to put what it was, and if you were brave enough to put your name and have it shared. And what was fun was that I made sure people had those. I would pull them out of my pocket and say, what a great thought. I didn't recognize that issue there. We absolutely need to get that in for maintenance or get that in for prevention. And so the day that I knew it really had struck home was I'm getting up on the stage. I'm now the commander of Michigan wing. I get up on the stage, and on my way up there, I could see these yellow cards as I'm processing from the back of the room, and I'm like, oh no, all these yellow cards, because somebody had put a dark power cord on a dark carpet, and it was, wiggling all over, right? This is not the cord that's going to be flat and I'm not going to fall on it. And so people had put the cards on it, so I didn't step on the cards on my way up. So of course, the first thing I did after getting up there was I said, all right, all of you who put those cards up here, just to show, and I knew I had enough that would stand up. I said, I need you to stand up. And when they stood up, I went around and I gave them my coin, my challenge coin for them being their best. And of course, a couple other people then stood up who hadn't at first, but that's all I had to do to improve the safety across, very important. I mean, when I was a national commander, we did have some fatalities in searches. I mean, we were credited with saving 400 lives, but I said that didn't net out the 5 that we lost, and so I just think it's so important for people to know how when the stakes are the highest, that's when it's the most important, perhaps, to step up. When everybody else thinks it's okay, I always used to say, when 40 million people believe in a dumb idea, it's still a dumb idea. So don't, step out of your comfort zone, right? Get comfortable in the uncomfortable and just share it. And then it's important as a leader to make sure all of my subordinate leaders also followed that. So it's now, fast forward to EOS, when I'm working with leadership teams, I say, it's awesome that you're really working together and you're identifying and solving. And remember, though, that muscle that you had to learn, that comfort you had to get into to realize that, accountability does come without shame. You can't allow shame to occur, or it breaks that communication down immediately.
Yeah. It's interesting. One thing that stood out to me is I was meeting with a superintendent of schools this morning, and we were talking about, as you rise in the organization, just as what you were saying, you hear it's more filtered what you hear, more what you want to hear, and then you're getting less raw data that's coming through. And she said, I have my ears, and I have people that I've built a lot of trust with in the organization, and they will say, hey, heard this, saw this. You don't need to tell me what goes on with it. You need to know this, unfiltered. And she's a very introverted leader. She actually, when we made the selection for her, the board was looking for someone much more extroverted, much more physically present in the community and very outgoing. But she had been with the district for a long time, and she was someone who had built long-standing trust in a way that someone who's a big personality, they would just approach it differently. So when I sat down with her and said, okay, here's what the board was looking for. Here's who you are. You are not this ideal candidate, but we have confidence that you're the right person for these reasons. She goes, oh my gosh, this is so helpful for me to know. This is what the board wants. This is who I am. I'm going to cross that chasm differently than they anticipate, but I hear what you're saying, and thank you for that information. And so she's kind of developed her own methods for getting that information up so that she can keep investing in those teams. And it's just critical. And, you know, your comments around setting the tone, what I'm hearing you say are, I have to do it verbally. I have to do it with my body language, my enthusiasm, the way I recognize people, because that all those things, it's like my husband and I have a joke that people don't get it until they're mocking you. Until you're there mocking you, they don't really believe that you mean, I want you to tell me when there's an oops. And so those are things, I think this decoupling accountability and shame is just unbearably hard. It's hard at home. It's hard in our nonprofit work. I mean, think about all the nonprofits that you're part of, probably. I know I'm part of, and it's like, we say we're going to do something, but we all have busy lives, and then it doesn't get done. And you're like, oh, okay, well, so give me a few more examples tactically about how, maybe in a nonprofit world, because we're not even being paid to be here, and I probably can't fire my board members. What are some thoughts on how we approach those conversations that might lend? And I know we haven't really defined, we've alluded to IDS a couple times. Maybe you could start by defining what the heck is IDS and how does that play in?
Yeah, so part of it is that you do have to have a way to solve. I think that it's just a wonderful component in EOS that we have. One of the 6 key components of any organization is the way that we treat our issues. So we need to have the right vision, so people shared by all, so everybody knows where we're going. Then if we have the right people in the right seats and we have data that tells us when we're on track and off track, now we can start to really bring forward the the issues, because it creates that transparency. I know what it's supposed to be and I didn't see it, so I better raise my hand, right? And so the way in which we solve it is first to prioritize it, because we should be predicting, do we really need to solve this right now? There are so many issues. And in fact, that's the other wonderful thing. I still remember, a couple of clients who said, the cool part is, like, we don't have any issues on our list. And I said, whoa, don't celebrate that. So that means that you don't know what's going to happen next. I said, do you ever get surprised? Like, you think that things are going to happen and then they don't? Maybe you operationally, you missed your revenue target, or, you don't have the donations coming in if you're a nonprofit. And then they'd say, well, yeah, but, and I'd say, somebody probably could have predicted that. So it's the way that we predict. So we do want to have issues, but we don't need to solve everything every time we think of it. It's that ability for us to say, what's important for us right now? What do we need for us, we think, right this week? And so then as we prioritize, what do we need this week? What's 1, 2, and 3? We take one and we look at it and say, let's identify what the issue is. I might ask, so Mel, tee it up in a sentence or two, make it hurt. What's the issue? And so you're really, I like kind of playing with that, make it hurt. And we normalize the word issue, because issue could be an opportunity. Issue could be a competitor's going out of business, and we should be over helping them and seeing if we can help their clients, because we don't want their clients to suffer, right? And so, thinking about it in that really broad, normalized context of issues are just things that need to be solved, we say, what is it? And then we try to dive to the root or roots. So how do we do that? It's asking why. So, the issue is that we didn't get the registration numbers that we needed for that workshop that we were setting up. Well, why? Why did we not get those? Well, our marketing didn't go out early enough. We forgot about spring break being in the middle of it, right? And why? Well, we didn't put together the same project plan that we typically, well, why? And so when we ask that enough times, it's not that we're always getting all the way to a root. Sometimes we find there's actually 3 or 4 or 10 things that we really need to solve. And then we look at it again and say, okay, let's all focus in on one thing most important for us to solve. And so only after we identify everything did we then discuss. And the discussion then is usually much shorter. There's just no need for folks to say, oh, yeah, I like Mel a lot. So if Mel says something, I'm going to go, yeah, what Mel said. You don't need to say that. Like, it's been said. And then the ability for us to solve. So identify the root or roots, discuss and solve. What we do typically is in any meeting, especially, there's so many of us that are in meetings that we say, oh my gosh, we spent a long time discussing or reporting or whatever, and we didn't move our action forward. Think about how that changes. We identify the root or roots. We all rally around it. It's a team sport. And it's okay. Anybody can bring up anything, right? And we can thank them for it. And then we decide as a group, or someone breaks the tie if needed. And then we actually say what we are going to do, what activities we're going to do to get done. And so that's the key in IDS. I would tell you this, because this has come up as well, that there's an Albert Einstein quote that to the effect that we can't solve issues from the same level of thinking in which we created them. And so at times,
we can't solve issues from the same level of thinking that created these issues.
Yes.
Okay. How do we change our thinking?
And so what that means is we may, there are teams that I say, are we really the best to solve this issue? We see it. We actually created it, some policy, process, something that we said created that, but we don't need to solve everything at our level. We could escalate it to somebody above, or we could delegate it to someone below, because the people that really are the ones who will take action on it tend to have a whole lot more care and concern about what it is that needs to be done, and might have other intel, other insights and information about it. So sometimes it's that thinking that it needs to be at a different level, and or that we need to be at a different level. So when I work with the leadership teams, I say, we can't be in the business today while all the phones are ringing, and as I collect them, and and say, not now. We've got to have people that help us.
I collect the phones.
Yeah. I did have somebody who was a veteran, and I said, you been in the Pentagon? He said, yeah. I said, they took your phone there, right? And he went, oh, okay. All right, I'll give up my phone. But that ability for us to really get our heads out of our own functional area and to work across the organization. Another great way that we show teamwork, and another way that we get others observing what might need to be brought up as an issue. And I love it when someone in the room who maybe they're in operations, focused on whatever they're saying, we're talking about the next, maybe it's benefit, it's a people issue, whatever. And all of a sudden they're chiming in ways that they haven't before, because they're used to, well, that's HR, they'll do it. And instead, all of a sudden they're saying, well, I just heard this in the warehouse. Maybe we need to know this. And so they're bringing out root or roots for us to help solve. And so it's that, inability for us to solve it. We're the ones that created that little mess. And so if we created it, how do we either get ourselves to think at a different level, because it is level of thinking, and or how do we get the issue moved to escalated or delegated to the right level?
Yeah. The comment about, sometimes we can't solve issues from the same level of thinking that created it. And what comes to mind for me as we were talking is we create customer policies. And one of the engagement survey items on our core survey is we always do what's right for customers. And it's amazing when you see the pockets of the organization that disagree with that item. Talk about an opportunity to delegate. It's like, what are we missing? You're in front line. What are you seeing? Or maybe it's their sales team. And they're like, and they maybe never have brought up the issue because it was policy and we just dealt with it. But if we can delegate down to the level of thinking where the action is, and they can say, well, if we did it this way, it'd be a whole lot easier on our customers and better for us as an organization. That's where some of these discussions really need to live, not a policy issue at a leadership level.
Yeah, absolutely. That's giving, raising the issue and giving us the information. And And I think a related piece that came up as you were sharing that, Mel, in my mind, is that we need to expect positive intent. And if you're like, oh my gosh, Amy, I can't believe you just threw another thing out there. It is related in that expecting positive intent is the people that you were just describing who saw that they weren't actually doing things in the best interest of the customer. If they expect bad intent from the leaders who set the policy, they're not going to raise the issue. They're going to think, you guys wanted that. I don't know why you wanted that. That's crazy. And I'm, again, a big believer, you've got to have that open ability for people to share so that those pieces. But expect positive intent also works down that when we look as leaders and look at something and say, why in the world did that happen? Why didn't they do this, that, or the other thing? That's such common sense, which of course we know is not common. And instead, we need to expect positive intent and think, wow, and here's how I do it, open, honest, vulnerable. I'll think, wow, what did I do or say that had them thinking that I didn't care or want it to be right? And so at a point when we really can have that conversation, I say I'm happy to not only fall on my own sword as a leader, but on any of them around me, any of them below me, I need to be able to say, I've failed you. I failed you if you thought that was our intent. It was never our intent to do what customers don't want or need. And I never wanted to put you in a position where you had to think, do I follow the organization and their values, or do I just go with what I think is right for the customer? We need to align that. We need to align those values. So that comes into play as well, because as we do share the vision, as we do help our organization from a management side know what we expect, it's also important for them then to be able to run with it and to know that they should expect that we want the best. And if we're not doing the best, they know how to raise the issue.
Yeah. So the assumed positive intent, I don't think is a separate issue, because I think it's the how we enter into those conversations. Because so often what I see great leaders do, and what I try my best to emulate as well, is when I'm going to a conversation that I'm frustrated with, I assume that there's something I'm missing, something I didn't know. It's like, or something they should have known that we didn't get the information to them. But if you can go in with that mindset that I assume they did their best, then you're not walking in with this person is a jerk face mentality. It's like, how did I fail you? What was your thinking here? Not what were you thinking, right? Totally same words, yes. Different tone.
Yeah.
No, what did we miss together? And that's amazing how that can disarm someone and take it from shame where defenses go up to openness of, I totally missed this piece of information, or I didn't put these pieces together. I was so myopically focused on my own piece of the organization that I never thought about the complexity of the billing, or who knows what it was. But I just think that assume positive intent, God, we should do it with our kids. We should do it with our clients. We should do it in our nonprofits with our kids' teachers, all of it. If we can do that, it takes our energy down a little bit, where we're a little more approachable, I think, as some of the more intense leaders out there.
And I think it's even extensible to our dogs. Just when I think my dog is barking to mess with me, and instead I realize he's barking to help me see there's an issue out there, life is much better. I just wish he could talk.
So I do a lot of manager training, and I talk about like raising kids, raising pets, managing people. It's the same skill set. And so the more you can cross over those skills, you're better at home, you're better at work. It's like, the dog's trying to tell me something. He's not trying to wake me up in the middle of the night. And maybe I should investigate and see what he's talking about. So, well, I don't want to keep everybody all day. I'd like to kind of wrap these with a couple tips and tricks. If we take nothing else away, if we're not operating on EOS yet, but we're thinking about it, if we really need to dive into engagement or what makes people tick a little differently, what are some of the main things we want to walk away with? And I'm going to bring back the quote about, you can't solve issues from the same level of thinking that created them. I think that's a huge takeaway. And sometimes that means outside eyes. And that's probably my favorite thing about EOS is bring in someone who can just be the outsider, facilitate the conversation so the team can be fully present in identifying, discussing, and solving those main issues. Setting the tone was something you talked a lot about, Amy, and setting that tone physically, setting it visually, reinforcing it over and over. I welcome these challenges, because the more we fix them at this level, the less of the ones way up here that have escalated that we have. What's really resonated with you out of this conversation, or that you want to
Yeah,
make sure people think about?
and a comment to setting the tone is, we always set the tone. Let's set the one we want.
Do it intentionally.
Have some intention in that. Yes. So yeah, absolutely. I think, one maybe a misnomer or thought that sometimes people think, so an EOS implementer, like they're going to come in and they have to have experience in our industry and know our business. And no, what we do really, really well is teach, facilitate, and coach, because I always say the answers are in the room. I just need to help raise the questions that are going to get you to IDS that, get you to really, identify, discuss, and solve those issues. So something to always think about is, it's not about finding folks that, are, have the right credentials, smarter in your particular field. And you said it well, it's those outside eyes. And that is really key. So it's how well we teach, facilitate, and coach is really the most important. I think just making sure that, we know that there's a difference between that genuine care and concern that looks like and might have us be a little too nice, and recognize how important it is to really stay kind. And sometimes when we catch ourselves thinking, boy, somebody just unloaded on me, they're being kind to me, expecting positive intent. And I think that that's really, an important component of all of that. And also know, I think it's just a wonderful thing that Gino Wickman, who founded EOS, set up, and it continues to this day. And it's the way I started. I 4 times in 4 different organizations, as CFO, as CIO, as COO, and led sales and marketing. I came into an organization, worked in that organization to solve whatever the issue was, and then brought in EOS because it's always a holistic solve that really needed to happen. And so recognizing that you can't just approach each thing at a time, you really do need to have a system that helps you raise them and solve them, instead of, functionally in their own area, really solve them together. So I think it's important to make sure that you're sharing those issues, right? That the team operates as a team, and that you share those and help each other. So I always say, again, it's a team sport, and it's all about, identifying and solving. And anytime we're hearing blame and shame, or feeling blame and shame, we need to stop and help people really to get back to identifying and solving, and being our best self, and bringing our best talents as a result.
It's interesting, as I've been doing this work, and so many of my clients now are operating on EOS, which is fun because we share the same language. We operate our business on EOS. And one thing I notice is it's so much easier to operate without shame if you have the right people in the right seats. Because when we have the wrong people in the wrong seats, what I see is a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot less willingness to raise issues and ask for help, because they think they need to hide that wrong person, wrong seat, and cover it with expertise. And so they have to be the smartest person in the room. They can't share any vulnerability. But once you get the right people, in all of our engagement surveys, they're like, yes, I ask for help all the time. No, I don't have to, be an expert in my role. I have all these experts to surround myself with. And so that's been a really interesting learning for me. And part of the reason it's so fun for me to work intensively on right people, right seats, on getting clear expectations for what a win looks like. Because at the end of the day, when you were talking about being kind, but not necessarily just nice, there's this great book that I've read probably 3 or 4 times called How to Say Anything to Anyone by Sherry Harley. And she talks, there's this one section that if I could just impart this one piece of wisdom to every manager in the world, I think we'd all be better off. And she says, whether it's midstream, I'm already managing this person, or when I bring them on, I say to them, I assume that my job is to help you be successful. And I'd like to have the freedom, if I see something you're doing or a way that you're operating that is getting in your way, I'd like to be able to tell you, do I have your permission to bring that stuff up? And do it without an agenda, because you hopefully don't have anything at that moment. And they're going to say yes. Human nature is, I want to grow. And when they say yes, then you get to come back to them later, even if it's later that afternoon, and say, you know how we had that conversation and how I could tell you the things you needed to know, whether it's food in your teeth or you're being really combative in this one group in the organization. It's so hard not to hear that person's intent because you already got permission. And God, I just love that little tiny tip of, do I have your permission to tell you if something's getting in your way? And they're like, yes, it could be body odor. It could be all kinds of things, but I have more courage because you've given me permission. I just love that.
I love that. And you, I actually have in my session space, I just looked over at it. I have those silly little buttons, like an easy button. I have one that's kind of like a whip sound because it's like, boy, we just nailed that. And it's like, yeah, we did it. And I have one that says very slowly and deeply, enter the danger. And I feel like Pavlov. I literally, can every once in a while just go move that, click the button, and somebody just starts spilling, because they sometimes need that. Slip. So, yeah. And helping people, really help people pull it out of them. It's not okay if you're sitting in a room in a meeting and you see somebody in great angst. It's our time to say, hey, what do we need to share? What's going on? So, yeah, I had a client once ask, should we have a code word for when we want to say something? And I said, maybe just say, hey, open and honest, is this a great time for me to share? Because then I never let somebody go more than a day. I don't want somebody to go home that night and think, I wonder what Amy was going to tell me. Oh, no. So I always am careful about it. But maybe that exact moment when the person did something wrong on the computer, that's not the time for me to say, yeah, let's talk about this. Like, I want to, right? We fixed the problem. And then I said, hey, before you go home, could I buy you breakfast? Because it was a night shift. Could I buy you breakfast? I'd love to just make sure we're all okay. So making sure that we open and honest, I just want to share, and maybe letting people choose a little bit as well. So really great stuff. But I love the accountability without shame is the only way that we really can bring out the best in everybody. And you and your team figure out, just great ways to help people assess and do that. So I've loved the conversations, both online here we've had, but also the offline conversations we've had about the ways in which they, you and your team really bring that to the best. So I'm looking forward to having my clients engaging.
Thank you. Amy, I think we could have spent 5 hours on this topic because it's so rich and there's so many nuances about how we can help organizations do a better job here. I think it's so intimidating, this topic. And we know as leaders, we need to do it. I actually saw a post on Monday on LinkedIn and it had a picture of a cold plunge tub. And it was talking about, I work with all these entrepreneurs and they're so tough and they do their cold plunges and they do these 5 a.m. workouts, but they hesitate to have these candor conversations with their clients. And that's what I'm challenging them on this year. Like, great that you're mentally tough. Now get mentally tough with your team so they can grow and you can grow as an organization. And it just really resonated with me as an EO member. And I'm like, yes, we can get so much better at this. So if that's a path you're on, if you've heard about EOS or you want to learn more about it, I really encourage you to reach out to Amy. I'm going to pull up her contact information here in a minute. If you're interested in a better people data, helping get right people in the right seats, whether you're on the EOS track already or not yet, and I say yet because I think most smaller companies should be, I hope you'll reach out to one of us or both of us because there's just so much better we can do for our people. And I love this space. So I'm going to bring up our contact information and leave you with that. If you want to take a screenshot, reach out to either of us on LinkedIn. But Amy, thank you so much for taking time. You are such a tremendous asset to this community and to your clients and the world. So thank you.
It's been a humbling honor. Thanks so much, Mel. You're awesome and have really brought out a great conversation for folks to get started on. So thank you.
Sounds good. Take care, y'all. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of You've Got People Problems. If you got something out of the conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with the other leaders in your network, because let's face it, we all have people problems. You can watch full episodes on YouTube or listen on your favorite podcast app. But either way, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.